want to say thank you for listening. So our sponsors have given some great deals in this episode. Check these out. This episode of the Real ResQ podcast is brought to you by Breeze Eastern, the world's only dedicated helicopter hoist and winch provider. SR3 Rescue Concepts, because you don't know what you don't know. And RescueSwimmerShop.com, official high-quality apparel featuring the silhouette. Breeze Eastern. They dedicate themselves to our helicopter rescue world. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November of 1945, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and the unique mission requirements have changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuers, the operators, and those being rescued has not. Contact them today by visiting them at breeze-eastern.com. SR3 Rescue Concepts is a training company that can help your helicopter training. They train daytime, nighttime, aerial firefighting, hoist, long line, fast rope, rappel, and more. They can assist your program with standardization and safety checks or just an FAA annual refresher. With the certified flight instructor pilots and experienced crew, they are ready to help your agency keep up to date with current techniques, rules, regulations, and equipment. Plus, right now, SR3 is offering 10% off anything in their web store with the promo code, all capital letters, Real ResQ, REALRESQ. Plus, they are offering 10% from their partners Petzl and their equipment. All you got to do is send an email to info@sr3rescueconcepts.com. Mention this podcast, the Real ResQ podcast, and they'll take care of the rest. 15 years ago, photographer and Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 526, Chris Razok, created an iconic photograph. This photograph depicted the silhouette of a helicopter rescue swimmer reaching down for an outstretched hand in need against the American flag backdrop. The image went viral and became a symbol worldwide for the rescue community and the people they help. Its wild popularity inspired Chris to launch RescueSwimmerShop.com, a web store offering official high-quality apparel featuring his evocative image, the silhouette. T-shirts, hats, patches, and stickers featuring the silhouette are available at RescueSwimmerShop.com, including the flagship design, So Others May Live. Follow Chris and his story on Instagram with the handle @RescueSwimmerShop. And if you are a rescue swimmer, support rescue swimmers, or just tell people you are one at the bar, this gear is definitely for you. When you get to the website, RescueSwimmerShop.com, enter the promo code, all lowercase, one word, RESCUE, RESCUE, for 10% off your order. We have another guest joining us from New Zealand. He has a ton of experience with a whole bunch of stories, and he's a huge advocate of crew resource management. I really enjoyed my sit down with him. I hope you do too. Please welcome my friend, Ernie Bryant. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real ResQ podcast. Today, I've got with me another good friend of mine, Mr. Paul Ernie Bryant, coming to us from New Zealand. Just so happens you and I know the same guy, Mr. Deeks, Chris Deacon. Love the guy. And he actually connected me with you, which is amazing. You are working as a chief crewman for Nelson Marlborough Rescue Helicopters. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Ernie, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Jace. Pleasure to be here.
Heck yeah. So for everybody else in the world that doesn't know you, please introduce yourself.
How long have we got?
Well, you know what, Ernie? For you, we got as long as you need.
Cool. I'm Paul Bryant. Everyone calls me Ernie, which is a nickname I got in the Air Force on day 2, and it's stuck like baby poo to a diaper ever since. So either or is fine.
What an analogy. Thanks for the analogy. That was pretty good. So that's how this podcast is going to go? All right, I'm in.
Listen, I'll try and clean it up from here.
No way. Yeah, keep it raw. Come on, baby.
So I currently work as the chief crewman for the Nelson Marlborough rescue helicopter based out of Nelson in New Zealand, which is at the top of the South Island. Beautiful spot. How did I end up here? In the mid-80s, I joined the New Zealand Air Force in the ground trade. Just after my senior course, I was lucky enough to apply and get selected for airman aircrew, which is all your flight engineers, helicopter crewmen, load masters, those sorts of things. The helicopter crewman in those days was a very sought after position and very hard to get into. So I opted to apply for a load master slot, which I got, and
nice,
and trained on the Andover aircraft, which is a British transport twin engine. It has the capability of collapsing its undercarriage so you can load a couple of vehicles in the back.
Cool.
And I worked on those for around 4 years. Great aircraft to fly in, young crews. Our old instructors and the commanding officers were in their 30s, they were so old.
The salty dogs.
The old dogs. And, but it was really, really good. And in amongst that, I also did on the Andovers, did a peacekeeping tour in Somalia in the beginning of '93 during the height of their conflict. And coming back from that, I decided that helicopter crewman was really where I wanted to be. So I applied to do a trade change, as they called it, and that was successful. And in sort of mid to late '93, I trained as a helicopter crewman or hoist operator,
nice,
machine gunner type thing on the Iroquois helicopters.
And sorry, I missed that. Which helicopter?
On the Iroquois, on the UH-1 Iroquois.
Nice.
Yeah. So anybody who's flown on a UH-1 Iroquois knows exactly what I'm talking about. They're such a great machine. And that sort of covered all things military, learnt to winch or hoist operate, down the wire, MVG, all that sort of carry on, and had a blast, absolute blast. It was such good fun. It's scary at times, but how it goes.
You know what? I get that. I've had my scared moments from once or twice. Yeah. You know what? Out of curiosity, give me one scary moment, just because. Oh,
okay. So in at a place called Waiouru, which is the central North Island, it's an army training ground. We were in either 3 or 4 ship, can't remember, formation, getting ready to take off. We were going to do live gunnery. So we had live ammunition on board, and the aircraft that I was in, we had all the oil drums, 44-gallon drums to be shot at the enemy. They were all loaded on board. We were the last aircraft to get airborne. As we got airborne, we got caught in the downwash and the dirty air off the other aircraft.
Yeah.
So the pilot goes, it's not looking too good. We'll do a run on landing. So we did a run on landing. That was all good, except that we still had too much momentum to pull up, and there was a ditch with a little bank about 3 or 4 feet high.
Oh.
And we're like, oh goodness, I wonder what we're going to do next. And because we're losing all our energy trying to slow down, we've lost rotor RPM because we're doing a run on landing. And he pulled the collective at the last minute to try and get us up over the top, and the back of the skids dug through the top of the bank, which we felt through the aircraft, and then slid onto the land on the other side of it. Of course, the other 2 or 3 aircraft had taken off and like fly around, and they looked around, and here we are sitting in the middle of the paddock with the engine shutting down and all that sort of carry on. So you can imagine that if it had been the toes of the aircraft instead of the heels, we'd have flipped forward, and then we're loaded not only with people, we're full of fuel, we've got live ammunition and the whole lot. So that's one of a number that spring to mind. So
holy cow! All right.
So so then in beginning of 1997, the Auckland Rescue Helicopter Trust, they didn't advertise it. Basically, just rang 3 Squadron and said if anybody was interested, there was a position there, and I knew that those slots. So that's your EMS SAR type work.
Yep.
I knew that would be fairly hard to get into, so I decided that I'd go. I never had a job interview. I just turned up and had a talk to them and said, I can start on this date. And they went, sweet, pretty much.
What?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Oh, that's nice.
And I effectively got out of my green overalls on Friday and started in red ones on Monday with very minimal training because I didn't need it. And stayed with the Auckland Rescue Helicopter Trust till 2012 when I moved down to Nelson when they got the BK117 and they wanted somebody with experience.
BK. I like the BK117. That's a fun aircraft to fly.
It is. They wanted somebody with experience and knowledge to come down and train the new guys. Nobody applied. So they ended up finding me in the corner. And I'm still here today. So that's the path to get there.
Wow, man, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. I've been actively flying as either crew from a loadmaster day through to helicopters since 1989. So it's 32 years, which is a long time. In New Zealand, there's not a lot of people that have continually flown in a crewed capacity. There are a lot of pilots, but not in a crewed capacity for that sort of length of time.
Yeah.
And 28 of those have been in helicopters. So.
Wow, man, good for you. You got me beat. Jeez. You should take over my job right now. You want to? You can do it. So, wow, man, you've seen some stuff then. So, yeah, what brought you to the search and rescue side of things? Like, what, you were in the Air Force, loaded out, guns and ammos. What brought you up to this side?
I think realistically and deep down was that when I first applied to go for airman air crew, I was young. I'd only been in the Air Force 4.5 years.
Yeah.
And I got rank very early and I got a lot of responsibility very, very early. So I was a qualified sergeant air loadmaster with an aircraft that weighed 53,000 pounds doing loading cars and chucking paratroopers out the door and all that sort of thing.
Love it.
And I wasn't quite 23. So, it was a big responsibility. And clearly, obviously, I had the ability to do that. But what that did is that by the time I actually went through my career as such, I was a couple of ranks ahead of my peers that I joined up with. I'd already been through a ground trade. I'd already been through one aircrew trade, and I'd buzzed around in Iroquois helicopters for 4 years and done over 1,000 hours in them. I wouldn't say it all became very ho-hum, but I think I sort of burnt myself a little bit earlier than I should have because I did everything so young. And there was a lot of people that maybe didn't get that opportunity for a few years later and then stayed in that trade, maybe went to a ground job for a while and then back flying, but I just continually did it. So I think in some ways I'd sort of not burnt out, but I'd done the military thing. I'd done enough. I'd done more than some people ever did in their whole career in 12 years. So to me, the next opportunity to move into the civilian world, and you might get a giggle out of this, was to go to the Auckland Rescue Helicopter Trust, where I knew I could sort of seamlessly go in. And I told myself at the time, I'll do that for 5 or 6 years, and then I'll get a real job.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Whatever. Why not stay with what you'd love, right?
Well, Jason, as by default, that's what's happened. It's an interesting path, and it's certainly one I didn't foresee happening in the very mid to early 80s. Never dreamed that this would be a reality. So
that's hilarious, and you know what's so funny to me is one, because I love what I do. I love flying. Like every time I get in the aircraft and we take off, I don't care what aircraft it is. You pull up in that hover, you roll forward, and all of a sudden you're just pulling altitude, and you're like, "Oh, this is awesome!"
Yeah, I still do that, but not to that degree.
I still do. Man, I'm just a kid in a candy store when I get in the back. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember on our recruit course, on our initial training, a part of that was to do a tramp in the hills. And Iroquois came in, with this grumpy old helicopter crewman who was probably about 26 at the time. and briefed us all. They flew us up into the hills, and then we'd walk out. And I vividly remember that flight. Like, that's way back in 1984. But I can remember sitting in that Iroquois with the thing going thump, 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 thump up the hill going, wow, this is so cool.
Wait, how did that go one more time?
Yeah. You can always tell when you're in an Iroquois and trying to talk. But at the end of 1996, early 1997, that enthusiasm wasn't quite the same.
Yeah.
So, but I still enjoy it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
All
right. So do me a favor then. The next time you go flying, just sit into it and just say, Jason would be so pumped right now. Quinny would be on top of the world. Just as you take off, be like, oh.
You would be if you see the terrain we fly around in.
Oh, Chris sends me pictures all the time. I'm jealous like every time. It's ridiculous.
Well, he's in Auckland, which doesn't. We fly up and around the mountains. We've got mountains surrounding all around us, and lakes. We go up into the area regularly where they film part of Lord of the Rings and all that sort of carry on.
Oh, that is incredible. I'm coming down to hang out with you guys. That's just no doubt. I might spend a month down there. Get ready, New Zealand. Here I come. Oh, it's funny. All right. So now you've done all your training. You've got through everything. What is if you remember, your very first SAR case, your first rescue?
Yeah. Well, luckily, I've actually got a reasonably good memory, which sometimes fails me, but usually it's okay. A lot of the military stuff was training, just going out and doing training and whatever, and you're doing hoists and confined areas and all that sort of stuff. But my first actual patient person that I did, or SAR that I did, was in the Iroquois. I did two that I clearly remember. The very first one was an overdue tramper up in the hills. And
Real quick, define tramper for me.
Hiker.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah,
no, it's all good. Hey, listen, I know you New Zealand guys, you got all different terms. Like Chris throws all these terms out at me. I gotta ask, what the heck does that mean? So anyway, all right, tramper, hiker, got it.
So tramper, hiker, hunter, those sort of people.
Perfect.
And we went to go and find them, and we went down into south of Auckland, down into these hills, and fairly new into that sort of thing. And it was a proper search, and when it's for real, it's always different than training, and you're reasonably, I wouldn't say, I try not to use the words excited, but probably the adrenaline's going a little bit more because it's real. And anyway, on the way down, I psyched myself that we were going for a body, that this guy was going to be dead, and we were going to get there, and that would be the worst case scenario. And we got down to the area where the hut was that we knew he'd been, and the pilot goes, he said, we might land first and sort ourselves out, and then we'll go and do our search. And everyone happy with that? And we're like, oh, yeah. And we're coming down this river, and he goes, looks like there's a bit of smoke. I wonder what that's from. So we went down there, and here's the guy sitting with his campfire, as happy as you and I, other than it was wet and cold. And that was it. And it's like, well, that was a bit of a fizzer.
Oh, that's great, though.
Yeah, and the first winch that I did on a SAR was out at Great Barrier Island. It's an island about half an hour east of Auckland. And very isolated, whatever. And this kid had gone missing, and they sent us in to try and find him, which we did, and hoisted him out of the bush and flew him into Auckland Hospital. So that was my first real SAR as such. He wasn't injured; he was just
missing kid.
Yeah, just a missing kid. Yeah, just got separated from the group a little bit, and New Zealand's full of bush and hills, and that's not an uncommon thing for people to get separated from each other.
So no major injuries to him or anything, just
no.
Oh, nice.
No.
Were you the hoist operator, or were you Okay.
Yeah. So it's a crewman, winch operator, or hoist operator, so dual role that we had. So there was three of us on board and went out and looked. Oh, sorry, there would have been four. We would have taken a medic with us as well.
So remind me, and this is for everybody else out there too. So you guys fly with two pilots up front, and then one crew member, or the two crew members in the back?
In the Air Force, it was one. So it was two pilots and the helicopter crewman. Okay. And the BKs in New Zealand, the most standard configuration is single pilot, intensive care paramedic, which is the higher level of what they can do, and then either a second medic / hoist operator, or someone like myself, are becoming dinosaurs, which are the crewman, EMT type kind of guys. Yeah.
Gotcha. Nice. And then that way you can go on the hoist hook and get hoisted in, or hoist as well.
No, so we don't. We're specifically role specific. So I only operate the winch. I could go up and down it, but I've seen how that works, and then I'll stay up the top.
Well, man, I can't get on the hook enough, and of course I can't hoist enough too. So I love it all. It's ridiculous.
Well, there's a couple of guys that I've had over the years who are being dual role, and we quite often go, if we get a job up to a hut that looks fairly easy, we'll swap over, and I'll go down the wire and go grab them and do that end of it, just for something different. But yeah,
did you ever get to do it? Did you ever get to do that?
Oh, now and again I do. Yeah.
Anything good?
Not the jobs I haven't. I've only done maybe one with those, but they're usually ones that we know somebody's at a hut and they're not life-threatening, or they're standing up and waving to us or whatever. Because if we get in there and it is something that's fairly life-threatening, I can't do too much about it.
And you're like, all right, hey, take me back up. I need to switch with you. Oh, that's funny. Nice. Yeah. Man, that's great. So first one was a landing, getting the guy out of just off a river who's fat, dumb, and happy instead of a campfire, and the other one was finding the kid. And you winched that guy out. Now, did you send down a medic to go get him? And then, nice.
Yeah.
Man,
I'm not sure whether to. Yeah, I'll tell you about the third one.
Hit me! Come on.
Yeah. I try not to talk about it too much, because some people don't deal with it very well, and others do. So we had a job came in when I was in the Air Force, and the police up in the Waitakere Ranges, which is west of Auckland, it's just a low, not a mountain range, but a hill range covered in bush, had found a body, and they wanted the body recovered. And they came into us and said, "Oh, look, police are up there. He's all done. He's in a body bag. Basically, we just need someone to be winched in, or hoisted in, put him in the Stokes basket. Out you go, down to the funeral director or coroner or whatever, and that's it." So I went, "Oh, okay." And I thought, I'll ride the wire then, and I'll go in and get him. And it sort of dawned on me that I'd never actually seen a dead body, a deceased person. I've never actually seen one for real. So I rang my wife and said, "Oh, look, I'm going up into the hills to go and get this body." And I said, I don't really know what to expect, and I'm still young. I'm late 20s sort of thing. And she said, "Well, when I went to my auntie's funeral, I just thought of her as being asleep. So if you think of them as being asleep and they're not going to hurt you, they're just lying there, you'll be good." So I'm like, "Oh, sweet." So after we thump in the Eric when we go out there, I pop on in, and I got all my helmet and all the bullshit on, and I get winched in. And as I'm getting winched in, I can see all these police and everywhere around the thing. And I'm thinking, "Oh, I thought they said the body was here." Oh, anyway. So I land. As I land and come off the hot, I turn around, and then I realise he's not in the body bag. He's not prepared. As a gang assassination, he's tied to a tree with most of his clothes removed, and had been shot at point blank range through the back of his head with a shotgun.
Oh,
that
my
was
God.
what I was promised. He was not asleep. And they turn around to me and they go, "Oh, great, you're here." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here, but I'm about to lose my shit big time and throw up."
What?
Yeah, so they basically looked to me for support. And I remember I never took my helmet off, and I left my dark visor down because I didn't want them to see the fear in my face as I got this guy and popped him in the body bag and tried not to gag. And I'm just like this. I'm not going to describe it. You can imagine what the scene looked like, because it was a gang, drug assassination type thing. So anyway, we get him in, and the helicopter comes back to lift me, and we're going up, and it's reasonably high hoist. Yep. And as I'm going up, I'm just like, "Oh, no way. Anyway, what happened was the zip hadn't been done up quite fully, and it came undone, and his foot popped out. I'm like, he's still alive. So, So
I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh. That's terrible. That is really terrible.
So what was sort of for me quite a horrific thing to be put into, cold turkey. At the time it wasn't particularly funny, but later on it sort of became a little bit easier to deal with. But
yeah,
that's something that in the EMS SAR thing in New Zealand, we don't do them every shift, but we come across a lot of death and injury by that, and body recoveries and things, and they're never easy, and they take a toll on you to some degree as well, but they're easier to deal with as your longevity in this business stays. So someone's brand new going in possibly won't deal with that like I didn't, the same as I would now. If I went into that guy now, I would deal with that completely differently. Probably that's why we're doing audio, not a visual.
Selfie, what?
No, I wasn't.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, terrible. Don't do that.
Yeah. So that was sort of the Air Force career which got me into that, and particularly understanding what the SAR environment's about, and to a degree the reality of it, and also the helicopters are not your friend. That when things go wrong, they go wrong horribly.
Right.
So it's a fairly steep learning curve for people, and
So you're talking like training or missions that go wrong?
Oh, everything. Everything goes. Everything.
I mean, you're very accurate with that. It's just like I've been on training flights where you're like, whoa, we're going back right now. Yeah, there's or land immediately. Like it's happened. Missions, same thing. Like you're on it. You're like, hey, we got this. We got to go. Or we're out. So.
And it's very easy. It's very, very easy, I think, to become complacent once you've done, got that first sort of adrenaline out, and we're just the guys in the heli. It doesn't matter whether you're military or in a BK-117. You're just the guys going off to a job. I've done this 1,000 times before. Yeah, and every 1,002th time you're going to get tripped up by somebody. So just be ready. Yeah.
Yep. That's actually, man, I teach that all the time to everybody. It falls under actually the DuPont Sturdy Dozen from the, I can't forget his first name, but anyway, the DuPont out of Canada. And he made the 12 things that go wrong in helicopter accidents, and most of them are human related. Yeah. And complacency is one of them. And, like that one and the norms drive me mental. They're, you get complacent because you do it so many times. It's like, I'm going through the motions. No, don't just go through the motions. Make it real every time, because going through the motions is how people get hurt. It's that one paying attention. And then the norms for me, the norms for me is like, this is the way we've always done it. No, that is no, it's not. We are not doing it the same way we did it in 1940. Stop saying that. Things progress, things get better, things change. You need to change. Anyway, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine.
That's right. No, everyone's got them.
Right? I love it. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, all right. So now in our conversation offline, you and I had talked, and you had mentioned you're like only one of a few guys in New Zealand, all of New Zealand, that has like over 4,000 EMS cases or jobs.
Yeah, there's not many of us. Yeah.
So Chris has like 5,000. Like he get an award for like 5,000 or something like that.
He writes a few down that he probably wasn't on.
Come on, Deeks. I'm calling him out now.
It might be 5,000 that he heard about.
I don't know what his actual number is. I do remember him getting an award, and I remember talking about it with him.
Yeah, he wouldn't be too different than me. So the Auckland Trust used to give you a plaque or a thing for the 2,000 missions.
Oh, maybe that's what it was, 2,000.
Yeah,
okay.
He did around the similar time as me. The crew guys tend sometimes to be a little bit higher because we used to go on hospital transfers that the medics didn't go on. We'd take a flight team, but
Okay.
he wouldn't be too far in this day and age behind me. He would be up around that sort of high 3s to early 4s as well.
Okay, so let's say he got an amazing 2,000, not 5,000. So my bad. Sorry, Deeks.
Right.
So you got a 2,000 round. You guys, 4,000 cases. That's unheard of for a lot of places. Like you.
And that doesn't. I don't include the training that I do. The only training flights that I include in that are for myself for night vision, where I need currencies and things. I've never kept a tab on how many hoists I've done, but it would be in the thousands. And yeah, so you know, the actual missions, I never really sort of counted them. It was just the fact that Auckland, when I worked there, had a database that managed to spit it out, and I've just sort of kept an Excel. I used to keep a logbook, obviously, but I've also kept an Excel spreadsheet, so that just does it all. I got a millennial to set it up for me. Child, come here, set this Excel up for me. And he obviously thinks I'm going to be around because he's programmed it out to about 2040 or something. But
that's hilarious.
But it does it all automatically, so I know how many NVG hours, how many winches I've done within reason, and flights and flight hours. So yeah,
that's
otherwise
great.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of us in New Zealand with that sort of numbers.
I mean, I know there are some memorable cases that you had in there, and I don't have anything in front of me to read, but I'll take any story that you can think of right off the top of your head, and then I'll start asking you questions.
Oh God, where do you even start?
All right, let's start with water. Anything out of the ocean, because I know you guys. This is something else that not many people talk about with New Zealand, because you guys support inland and mountain rescue. You do river rescue. You do the ocean, like shoreline rescue. You go offshore. You do it all. It's and I know, like, all right, so New Zealand is not, it's not the same size as the US or other areas that you're going to. You guys are relatively small, but ideally you're going all over the island, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very multi-rolled in what we do. There's a few helicopters in the country that predominantly do inter-hospital work.
Yeah.
But all of us at some point will do EMS, and some of us that's all we do. And for us here in Nelson, because we're quite isolated, we've got all the Marlborough Sounds, which is little islands and sounds as such. People get very isolated, so we're out there, boats, water. We don't do a lot of that here. They do that more in Auckland, because Auckland's got coast on either side of it.
Okay.
We did a lot of water rescue stuff in Auckland, and boat winching and hoisting as well.
So you're winching right off the boats?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could start with that.
Yeah. So if anybody's never done it, it's pretty much like roller skating on ice with a blindfold on, because everything's moving. The ocean's moving, the vessel's moving, we're moving, the guy on the end of the wire's moving. And I've sort of over the years found that there's a number of different things that once you've mastered those, the rest of them become, I don't want to use the word easy, but easier. So when you first start doing a day hoist out in the paddock can be quite difficult.
Right.
Later on, you're doing a confined area with trees around. Then you go off and do this and this and this. Once you've got into the water and boat rescue, doing land rescue is not difficult at all because you've got so much reference. So if you can pull off a good boat winch or water rescue, that makes the rest of the life easier. Going on from that, once you get into NVG with the night work, that becomes a different scenario altogether. So, but yeah, certainly boat winching. There's a number of
maybe actually hold on. Maybe we should go backwards, and we should start with the wide open area hoisting to make it easy. Yeah. Easy, your words, and then we'll get to the boats, the more difficult.
well, we can make this as hard as we want, Aaron. I just sort of found that particularly when I did my initial training, was that because everything was like a stepping block. So you learned how to how to torque the aircraft. Then you learned how to torque the aircraft on the slope. And then you did this and this and this. And by the time you'd finished your crewman course and then your winch operator course, you were doing stuff right from the beginning, but you were doing it like that, second nature.
Yeah.
So for hoisting and winching type scenario on land, when you're initially doing it, you know, positioning, how to position an aircraft, and particularly something like a UH-1, which is a big machine,
Yeah.
over the top of one spot, that you have to get that hook into their hand. So I'm not sure what your training's like, but for us in New Zealand, particularly on the land winching, the person on the ground doesn't move. They're not allowed to move.
Oh, that's us too.
With the hand, yeah, I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
And that can be, you know, when you're learning, you dance all around. It's like,
Control that cable. Make that, own that cable.
Yeah, I just had an expression I managed to suck that one back in. But anyway, that can be quite difficult.
Wait, was it a New Zealand expression? Because I love them.
I don't know. No, I won't. We'll keep, just in case his children listen to this one day. But anyway, it can be quite difficult. Once you've got that nailed, then trying to do that in a treed area can be difficult. Then trying to do that at height. So we did one recently in Nelson that was filmed for a program, and of course they're all over it, and it was 120 feet in amongst pine trees. We could hardly see the guys, and the footage on there, the hook drops bang straight into his hand. Well, now that didn't happen for me straight away. That's taken a long time to be able to get to that sort of area. So as you develop through those sort of things and then go into your night hoisting, that's a different scenario altogether. Then start strapping on MVG. I don't know if you guys wear them.
We do, yeah.
We use them regularly. And I'll come back to MVG and stuff later on.
Sure.
With that. But, you know, doing that and then having your no peripheral and having to move your head as opposed to your eyes to be able to do that sort of stuff. Now, anybody that I've trained as a winch operator will all tell you the same thing. All of them, bar none of them, have had their neck wrenched during training, because I start them at the beginning during daytime and I grab the helmet and I physically move their head. Just not, as brutal as that sounds, what it does, Jace, is that when they start, they tend to just use their eyes to look around. So if you can get them moving their head from day one, when it comes time to them to put the night vision gear on, it's almost sort of second nature, and it's not such a new thing for them to actually have to go, wow, if I want to look at my tail, I actually have to go like this, or I have to go like that. Or
wow, I like that.
So yeah,
I might steal that for my own training.
Yeah, I've got a few that are sort of a bit still sort of 80s and not quite as PC as the world would have it.
That's all right. Hey, if it works, use it.
Well, I do, and it's not so that I can you know, beat these people to get away with it. It's about getting really good. It kind of is.
There's the truth. The truth just came out. Come on, baby.
It's about getting really good disciplines and really good standards into these people straight away.
Yeah.
As opposed to just the father and son, this is how I used to do it. No, you'll be right. And, you know, move your head now and again. And of course, I had that whole military training as well, where you didn't, what you were taught is what you did. You didn't vary from that at all.
Right.
You stuck to it. So, yeah, so once you get onto that, and then into the boat and water winching again, then that's a different ballpark altogether. And plucking people out of the water, I've sort of found, can in some ways be a little bit easier, because you've got a little bit more fat in the system.
Yes.
You know, you can either drop your guy into the water if you've got a swimmer, or you can put somebody into the water. If you don't get to them, you can pull them back out, fly along, drop them back in. Yep. As many times as you need to, and you've got a couple of 100 feet of cable to play with as well. So you can always go back and keep a reference with these people if possible. So that in some ways it's a little bit easier. When you get with a boat, you're stuck. You're stuck there. And the smaller that vessel is, the harder it is. I think one of the hardest ones I've ever done was coincidentally with Deeks, and it was off a 15-foot runabout way out in the middle of the Hauraki Gulf, where there was no reference, no nothing. And trying to get this guy off in a stretcher, it had a cardiac arrest. And it felt like it took a week. But in actual fact, on the video that we had, down the wire camera, it was about 35 minutes to get him off. And we tried everything, coming in high, coming in low. We spun them around. We did everything because it was so small. The pilot just had no reference. Pilot's on the right in the BK. We're in a left-hand winch. You don't get much harder than that. And what we ended up doing was that by default, because Kiwis are such nosy buggers, everybody, when they see a helicopter, wants to come over and have a look and see what's going on, because it might be a photo opportunity, you know. And so this guy turned up, and what we did is we got him about sort of 50 meters yards in front of the other one. We got the two of them to go along at the same speed, and the pilot used that as a reference while I picked them off the back of this tiny cabin. So
that's super smart. I like that.
Yeah. So boat winching in Auckland wasn't unusual. One of the ones that I always have a giggle at was a launch, 40, 50 foot launch, and it was sinking, and we went out, and we'd got a couple of guys who were already in the water, so we grabbed them, and there was one guy, and they said, he doesn't want to let go of the boat. And basically what he did, if you can imagine, is he climbed up onto the fly bridge as it's sinking slowly, and then that went under. So then he went up a bit further, and he ended up right up on the top of the mast, hanging onto the whip aerial. And we're just sitting there laughing, going, mate, in another couple of minutes, you're going to be in the water whether you want to be or not. He was never going to let go of that boat. He was just never letting go of it. And in the end, obviously, he did, and we fished him out. So,
now, how are you getting the guys out? Are you guys using a rescue basket or?
Strop, cinch collar. Strop.
So is that a swimmer going down with the strop, putting it on? I know Deeks has done a little bit of both, but kind of curious as to what you're doing.
So in Auckland, most of the guys, all of the guys pretty much were trained to swim competently. You've got someone like Deeks who's a surf lifesaver, so he's at the other end of the spectrum. But all of them were confident to go into the water. Some would come off the hook and stay on a safety rope if they were really confident. So someone like Deeks would do that, whereas the others would stay on the hook, and we'd just have we had a neoprene floating style strop, so it could float in the water while you put it on and get it on, and up would go. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So the guy that's hanging on to this whip antenna going under, I'm going down with the boat. Yeah. So you just, as soon as he gets to the water, swimmer goes over and says, all right, hold on to this, dude. What's wrong with you? Let it go. Gotta let it go, sir.
Yeah. You see some funny things in this industry sometimes that it's like, really, it's gonna happen no matter what. So, and then as I said, then you move into NVG doing the night hoisting as well through those, and that's another different scenario altogether, where you're looking down essentially to where we refer to them as the cardboard bits in the toilet rolls. Yep. Looking down the toilet tubes. And
that's exactly it. That's a great analogy. If you put like a little green lens on there, just look through that, and then all day and be like, oh, this is what NVGs look like. That's it.
Yeah. So in keeping with that, I just put I know when I emailed you, I said about some of the things that I'd seen, and I'm going to go into NVG. Over the years, there's been a lot of changes, like from when I first started in the military, even more so to now, but even within the EMS sector in New Zealand, the procedures that have been brought in, some of the boundaries we now have, some of the equipment that we now use that we never used before. And like you say, just because we did it 40 years ago doesn't mean we need to be doing it now.
Right.
We do need to be careful that we don't introduce new ideas because somebody thinks it's a great idea. That 10 years ago we went, no, let's not do that.
Yeah. Or 10 years ago it failed, and now you're trying to repeat something that failed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I've seen that happen as well.
Yeah.
The level of training that we do now, and there's enough guys in the system, around sort of my era or behind me, that you actually, I wouldn't say you're getting better training, but you in the early days it was a little bit hit and miss. They're all volunteers. And I learnt from somebody else sort of half pie and just they made it work in those, in the 80s sort of thing. Whereas now it's a very structured training system, and we have much higher standards that we expect of people. And of course that has a ongoing thing. We have all the aircraft have tracking systems in them now, either Spiders or Track Plus or whatever. So you can see where everybody is and what they're doing. And if somebody comes to grief, you've got to, say you've got to point to start, but that doesn't always work either, because I went to a crash that had happened within an hour. So
what kind of crash?
A helicopter crash, sorry. It was a
Okay.
Robinson R-44. And the first one landed, and they said he left before us and he isn't here. So we jumped in straight away. So it was less than an hour had been missing. Went to his last known point, and of course, obviously they're every 3 minutes or whatever at 90 knots. So you've got a reasonable target to start with.
Yep.
The New Zealand bush being like it is and being so dense, it took a week before we found him.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we went up for most of that day. I can't remember how many hours we flew. We did a lot, and we kept finding things that we thought was a crash site, and it wasn't. And we just went round and around the area. And as much as people would say, oh, well, surely a crashed helicopter, you'd find it straight away if you know where it is. This thing, I've got photos that I use for training, and you can't see it. Even when we found it, you've got to move on different angles to see the tail boom and stuff. So anyway,
deep in the just the trees, and
just swallows it. Swallows it. Yeah. So we searched during the day, then we had a break, and then we went back up at night with the NVG to see if we could see any light or anything, and nothing. And then they started sending Landsar and the ground guys in, and a few other helicopters. And then towards the end of that week, so that was on the Monday, about the Thursday or something, they started finding a couple of little bits out of it. And we went back up and located it and went and sorted it.
So I can probably assume that the pilot perished on impact. And okay.
Just one of those scenes that you would be in with people with a helicopter crash.
Yeah, not good.
Which having been to a few of them over the years, that quietens you down just for a little while.
Yeah. Yeah. Puts a little reality into it for all of us that fly too. You're like, ooh.
Yeah, absolutely. And he didn't really do anything wrong or stupid. It was just an accident, and that happens. But you got the training things, and then of course we've got the NVG. Now the NVG has been brought in to give us a safer night flying capability.
Love it. Love it. Highly recommend it to anybody that's flying at night. Get goggles. Just get them.
Absolutely. The problem I have with goggles, and anyone who's worn them for a significant time would probably, hopefully agree with me, is that as much as they're good, they will drag you into places that you should not be in because you can see.
Very true.
In our situation, the two episodes I've had where one wasn't quite as critical as the other, but the other, I believe that was the end of my life, was on wearing NVG. And I've had another person that I've taught who recently had a similar sort of experience wearing NVG. So
okay, whoa! We got a story here, my friend.
Come back.
You're gonna leave me hanging. I love it.
The point is that a lot of people will they'll do the Envis course or whatever, and they strap their things on. They go out. It's a full moon. There's 1,000,000,001 stars.
It's beautiful.
And they go, isn't this lovely in the shadow off the trees, and I can see this and I can see that. And they do that half a dozen times, and they go, we're good to go. And then they go out on a night that's not so good, and they go, it's not so good.
Like zero moon. So you're talking, be fully clear on this. So night vision goggles work better with light, as crazy as it sounds. But you can't use them during the day because it whites them out. But at night, if you have like a full moon or a half moon, it's perfect because everything is illuminated just right. But then if you get no moon, it's dark, maybe a cloud cover, so you don't have much background illumination.
You lose definition on the terrain, and you can't see things. One of the classics that I think that a lot of people miss is you're flying along, and then you don't actually realize, but you're going through rain because you can't see through the NVG.
Totally.
We have procedures here where the pilots regularly, as we fly along, will turn the landing lights on and off. So you can see if you're in rain or if you're in. I don't know. Have you ever been in snow?
Oh yes, yeah.
Crazy.
Kodiak, Alaska, my friend. It's interesting. It's interesting.
So NVG is yes, while it does keep you safe, and it's certainly, I've lived through the days of thundering out with nothing to thundering out with wearing NVG. I would still take NVG hands down, absolutely. I would.
Yeah.
But I think the big take home I'm trying to push there, Jason, is that they drag you into places that you shouldn't necessarily be in, or weather that you shouldn't necessarily be in.
I totally agree. And you know what? That's going to come back to the full crew camaraderie inside the aircraft. Everybody has to have a voice. Everybody needs to talk about things. Like if somebody's uncomfortable and you got just perspective. Everybody has to have their piece of the pie in there and talk about it.
So we get taught that. I'm sure it's worldwide. We get taught about this in this crew resource management.
Yeah.
And I don't really care what you perform in that helicopter. The second you go in, you are an integral part of the crew. Absolutely, 100%. And if you're not, and if you don't take that mindset, then you might as well just go to SeaWorld and jump in a Robinson once a year and go for a fly and eat your popcorn, lick your ice cream, and go, yeah, I've done tons of helicopter flight.
Because that was great.
That's what you're doing. If you're not going to have a voice and you're not going to speak up and you're not going to question things, then and I find that with new medics or crew, trying to teach them crew resource management and how that actually works. And what a lot of them don't understand is that they should be the person asking well before us. So if you're in a situation where the weather's deteriorated, that voice should be them going, is this normal? Or is this like, are we okay? And then getting a responsible answer back from the rest of the crew, as in, yeah, we're fine. We're still doing 90 knots. We've still got 500 feet underneath us. We're just going to slow down because it's getting a bit crappy or what have you. Right. But if you just what do you know? Shut up. We're busy. You're going to end up in a pile of poo. There's no two ways about it. Yeah. And I've always thought that if you can justify to other people with I don't necessarily mean the word justified, but give a rational explanation. Say, yeah, this is quite normal. Remember, a helicopter can pull into a hover. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up to this ridge line. The pilot's going to have a look over the thing and go, nah, that's no good. And we're going to turn back because we're in this valley system. And if you can reassure them, is probably the word I'm looking for, they'll grow on that and they'll understand what they can or can't do and where all that fits in. But CRMs, that's huge to me. It's just absolutely. I think a lot of the time it gets underplayed. And there's a lot of time that we use it that we don't even realize we're using it to keep ourselves safe. One of the ones that I use regularly is if you're flying and you can open the doors. So most helicopters have a restriction speed on the door, be it 50 or 60 knots or whatever. If you're flying and you can open the doors because you're at that speed, you need to ask yourself, why? Is it because we're about to go into a search area and I need the door open to have a look? Fine. Is it because we're about to hoist and I need to open the door because I can't do it from inside? Fine. Is it because we're approaching into a confined landing area and I want to keep the rotor clearances? Fine. Is it because the weather's shitty and we're now down so low and so slow that we're actually getting ourselves into a dangerous spot? And once you can start quantifying that, that's the one I use, and particularly at night as well, is looking for decreasing airspeeds and altitude and then going, why are we doing this? Why are we not at 1,500 feet doing 120 knots? Why are we at 500 feet doing 40 knots?
Right.
And throwing those questions out. And it may be that you need to do that for half a mile just to get around the coast and then you're clear. You can justify that, but if you can't, that's the first flag for me is the door speed.
Yeah. You know what? I'll tell you the story that I had myself, and I like to throw myself under the bus from time to time because it helps others, and I have no shame. So I make mistakes. It happens. If you ask my wife, it happens regularly. But so I'm flying back, in the cabin, and I hear up, hey, we're gonna shoot the approach, blah blah blah. I'm like, cool, and I'm sitting in the back, and all of a sudden we fly over the airport, and we're still going, and I see us, I'm like, what are we doing? And at that moment, the whole crew kind of was like, oh, wait a minute, did he not understand? And so they explained, oh, we're going to shoot the approach. I'm like, okay, I understand that. We just flew over the airport. And they're like, no. The approach starts down south, and we're going to get into the approach path and come north. And all of a sudden, then it clicked to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, my bad. So it wasn't that I wasn't paying attention. It was that I did not understand that there was not an approach path from the north and an approach path from the south, or just the approach paths coming from the south. So learned something that day. And again, it got brought up in a safety meeting, but again, like throw myself under, they'd be like, I didn't know what the heck they were doing. I was still a young crew member. And
it doesn't matter. That's the whole point, is that you recognize that, and then you know how to approach that, or teach somebody else and say, this happened to me. Whatever, but if you just sit there fat, dumb, and happy, like our friend Deeks does,
come on, Deke.
I know he's going to listen to this.
Oh, me too. This is going to be great. We can pick on him. There's nothing he can do about it right now, too.
But if you're just sitting there looking out the window, you're ineffective. You're just a passenger.
Right. Agreed. So I got to back up to this story of, come on, I have not forgot. And I know everybody out here that's listening is like, oh, so what's the story?
Well, it is. And I think really more than the story, it's what got learned out, what got taught, and what's been learned out of it. And this has helped save another crew a few years later. So we, excuse me, we're actually in an AS350 Squirrel. We're using it as a backup machine. Went to go and get this guy out of the hills. It's 11:30 at night, MVG, weather's okay, but a cloud on the top of the hills or whatever. And when you do CRM training, they talk about the Swiss cheese and all the holes lining up. So the problem is, having experienced this, when you realize that you've gone through some of these holes, you're already through the next two. They've already happened. So unless you keep on top of your game, it's going to go pear-shaped very, very quickly. And that was sort of what happened to us. Not unaware, but we allowed ourselves to get into a situation that either the pilot, or certainly myself, from my experience, should have picked up well earlier, but we didn't. And we went to go in to winch this. I was going to winch the medic in, and I'm standing on the skid of the Squirrel, and I flicked my head around, and I went, "Let's get the out of here." You can put whatever word you want. Because
on the blank.
As I looked down the tail boom at the lights, I could see swirling fog around the tail boom.
Okay.
And then I flicked my head forward, and we were completely in white. And we'd gone inadvertent IMC in the hover with me out on the skid wearing MVGs. This cloud rolling over the top of us. So,
holy
amongst
smoke.
all of that, so anybody that's listening, in particular helicopter pilot, knows what's going to happen in the next 20 seconds. And they know that I probably shouldn't be here talking to you. So I got myself in somehow, slammed the door shut, and we went to turn to get out of it, believing that we were heading back out the valley we'd come in. But unbeknown to us, we'd actually made 2 pedal turns to the right, and we were now facing somewhere around the vicinity of a 2,000-foot climb to get over the top of the mountain that we were going to winch on. So we never came out of the cloud because we were possibly generating our own. We're looking through MVGs. All the position lights and anti-strobes are flashing. So it's like out of a sci-fi sort of movie. The pilot is concentrating on keeping that aircraft flying. And I pulled all the CRM I could out of my bum to give him a hand to keep him as controlled as I could and back him up. And the medic did the same. He had already adopted the brace position because he wasn't on comms. He was getting ready to be winched. And after about a good minute or more in this gloop waiting, knowing that the next thing that's going to happen is either the ground or trees are going to come through the front, and that's going to be the end of our lives, the radar altimeter started screaming, and we believed that we were climbing out of a valley, and it was bugged at 200 feet. So we had less than 200 feet below us to terrain, still in cloud, still in inverted IMC. And then about 10 seconds later, we popped out of it into the stars. When we went on the tracker and had a look, if we'd been 50 meters to the right, we'd have impacted.
Oh my God.
So that's pretty sobering sort of stuff. And we flew about another half hour. I'd actually told the guys that we need to land, and we went to, and there was another sort of little issue, and we went, no, stuff this, let's go to an airfield. So we did, and we landed there about, I don't know, I can't remember, 12:15 or something at night, and sat on the ground for close to 2 hours, just trying to deal with what we'd just done. So as scary as that is, and as much as I hate sort of reliving it, the things to take out of it is that we had a really reasonably experienced, or a very experienced pilot, not so much on MVG, but a very experienced pilot. We've got a very, very experienced crewman, winch operator in the back, and a medic. And we got ourselves into that situation. And when you look at it, we had task fixation on the way in. There was a couple of other things that we did. I can't sort of think off the top of my head, but the flags were there. They were there. A bit of fatigue because it was late at night. There's task fixation. Let's go and I wouldn't say it was complacency, but it's just another winch at night.
Yeah.
Like,
should be relatively easy.
It should be a walk in the park for us.
Yeah.
And then some other sort of bits and pieces. But that's what I say. By the time you actually realise you are in those holes, you're already through them. You're already on your way to the next one before you realise that sort of thing. We believed that we were flying out the valley. We didn't. We did 2 pedal turns without realising and went towards there. I sat on the gauges for the pilot and told him, just read out his airspeed, told him his wings were level, kept him calm. He was very proficient in instrument flying. He didn't have an IFR rating, but he was very proficient in instrument flying. And the combination of that and the medic shutting up until such time as it was, and I mean that in seriousness.
Yeah, no. Basically, I'm losing my train of thought right now, but it's basically pertinent information only. Like if you see something, call it out. If you don't, there's no reason to talk.
He was very, very quiet because he didn't know what had happened, and he wasn't wearing MVG. He just knew that it had all turned to shit very quickly for us.
Yeah.
So by the time he got on comms and listened, he realised that we were in serious, serious trouble. And then towards the later part, he started coming in as well, backing up what I was doing with that pilot and going, "You've got this. You are under control. We're still climbing. We're doing whatever speed we were doing." Blah blah blah. So, the learnings from that are huge, and that's where I say, like MVG, we wouldn't have gone in there if we didn't have MVG. We just wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
But we did because we've got goggles and we can see. There's a lot of learning out of that, and particularly in crew resource management. And I go back to this, fat, dumb, and happy. If all you're doing is being a crewman in the back that operates the winch now and again, go and work at the supermarket because you're an integral part. If you're a medic that all you're focused on is the patient, go and join them because you're part. The three of us combined on that evening to get the 3 of us out of there. And I knew, having been to a number of helicopter crashes, I knew what was coming. I knew what was about to happen. Very, very real. Very, very real. So luckily, because we got out of that, I teach the new winch operator crewman part of what I did because I can only do so much. And that paid dividends not long ago with one of our crews where the pilot got spatially disorientated on MVG and the crewman went and just jumped in. You're doing this, you're doing that, bang, 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 and they got out of it, which could have potentially been another catastrophic event. So, like I say before, CRM's massive to me. I watched it in the Air Force with senior crewmen when we were on MVG and ship weather. One of the Iroquois in 2010 crashed in similar conditions to us. They did a turn and went into the hill. excuse me. So these things are very, very real. And I learnt from him about when to speak up and when it was appropriate. And I've used it over the years. And sometimes you do it when it's inappropriate and you get a bit of a backlash. You got to take the wins with the losses.
Absolutely.
But at least you're doing it. And in that situation where we were in inadvertent IMC, I don't know many people in the helicopter who've been inadvertent IMC in the hover with their crewman standing out on the skid, flown for close to 2 minutes and lived to tell the tale. So, that's good training. It's good CRM. It's keeping your head focused on the task. And, as I said to you earlier, you can walk around with a T-shirt with all sorts of sponsorship and all over it. It doesn't mean.
No, you got a job to do. Do your job.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Quiet professionals. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. My buddy Mike Odell on that one. We need quiet professionals. Yeah. Wow.
So, as much as I've had some really good laughs and bits and pieces, there's been some very sobering times, and sometimes you look back and go, gee, like you really cut the wire. People have said a lot to me over the years, it must be dangerous flying in helicopters. I used to say it was more dangerous driving on the Auckland motorway going home after. You get some clown overtakes you or cuts you off or whatever. It was more dangerous doing that sometimes than flying in the helicopters. And I think, when you look at how many times you have that on the roads or other things versus what we go through, and for the amount of, for the volume that I've done, the number of those is only a very small percentage. But of course, that percentage is the high percentage of what we're doing, isn't it?
It is, of course. Like, it's whatever. It's what we do. All right. So, again, I mean, you're just kind of giving me little pieces of everything you've done. I'm in. I'm in for the long haul tonight. I don't know about anybody else, but all right. So we talked about a little bit of water and boat hoisting. That was in the mountains.
Yeah.
Got it. What else you got in the mountains?
We got a lot in the mountains. I'm just trying to think of something that's interesting.
Hey, it's all interesting to me. I love it all. So.
Yeah. We do a lot. We do a lot in mountains. I think if we take that the next step and forget about the mountains, what we get in our region is a lot of locator beacons, personal locator beacons.
Okay.
Because there's 3 national parks here.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people from, not so much since COVID, but pre-COVID, there's a lot of foreigners that we accidentally allow into the country.
Just wait till you accidentally allow me in the country. Oh, game on.
So they go.
Go on, Ernie.
They go hiking in the hills, and a lot of Kiwis do as well. So it's a very popular area to come to. So when you get a locator beacon job, more often than not, you don't actually know what you're going to. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of detail, but usually nothing. And you'll go there and you sort of try and have a guess of what you're going to, but it's not always the right scenario. And you could be, the exciting thing about those jobs, if I use the word exciting, because if it's at lunchtime, I'd rather be having lunch, but is that you don't know what you're going to. So if you get an EMS job, they go, okay, we've got a motor vehicle accident, we've got chest pain here, we've got whatever. On the way there, you go, okay, this is what we've got. And
you're preparing for the patient. Like you know kind of what you're going to. Yeah.
With a locator beacon, you don't know. So, normally we chuck on a bit of extra fuel. We'll put our harnesses on because it potentially could be a winch job. There's all those sorts of dynamics that come in. Then when you get there, it might be just that you do a simple hover load off a rock to pick them up. Or it could be that they've fallen or they're wherever, or they're on a track. One that always sticks into mind was a guy who slipped and he tumbled close to 200 to 300 feet down the side of the mountain. Just lost his form. And luckily they had a beacon with them and set it off. And we got there, and of course, there's these people, and we dropped the medic off on the ridge line to go and talk to them. They go, no, it's not us. He's down there. And and then as you talk, so this guy, we were in the squirrel and that one as well. All the bad things seem to happen in squirrels. I wanted to avoid them. So I sent the medic in to do that. And in the screw, you do a single person or a single stretcher winch because of the weight limit. It's only a 300-pound winch on those.
Yeah, tiny, super thin
Yeah.
cable. Are
Yeah.
you guys using a Goodrich or a Breeze Eastern?
We use a Breeze Eastern 600
Okay.
pound on the case, but we don't use squirrels anymore. This is going back a few years.
Oh,
So
okay.
because I hadn't done a lot of hoisting on the squirrel, the way you stand on the skid, you've sort of got to lean out on your whole body weight on your harness to get the stretcher in on your own.
Okay.
And I said to the pilot, I think I need to have a bit of a practice at this. So we went into a 20-foot hover, had a practice, sweet, go up. And I thought to myself, you know how you do? Whatever you do, don't look down. So I get this guy and I'm winching him, and I get him up to the skid and everything, and it's all going good because it's a manual boom. And just as I did that, I sort of dropped my head. And of course, we're at 4,000 feet, even though he was only whatever off the ground. But then the terrain, and the way I looked at it, there's like 2,000 feet underneath me, and I just go, oh, holy shit. If I fall now, I'm dead. And all this is going through you while you're looking at the stretcher in.
So are you afraid of heights? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, heights, blood, and what's the other one? Yeah.
And you're flying helicopters, hanging out the side of them, and dealing with patients. Awesome.
Yeah, no, I don't really suffer too much with heights. I actually, to be fair, I suffer more climbing a ladder. Just up a ladder to do something at home. That scares me more than anything, because I know if you slip, it's not going to end well. But on a helicopter, I'll quite happily stand out on the skid at 100 feet, 150 feet. It was more that I just looked down and the terrain slipped away. But so the mountain stuff can be very, very interesting work.
Yeah.
And we'd get quite a high percentage of that here, more so than the water. But even with our bush, New Zealand bush is so dense in places. Trying to find people, or trying to find, the track that they're on, and all this sort of thing. And I wouldn't say it's a bit of an art, but it's certainly something that takes a while to be able to visually search while you're moving, looking down and through the canopy, and being able to shift your gaze and look up and do all that sort of thing, all multitasking at the same time, to look for something there that you might just spot a glimmer of just for a second and go, whoa, got him, or back again. And even our guys, going in red overalls and white helmets, they can be really, really hard to find. They can be super hard to find because our bush is just so dense. And, as you know, with hoisting, you only need sort of a couple of square meters to be able to get anybody in or out. You don't need a massive area, but it's trying to find them can be
especially when you have a thick canopy on top, double, triple canopy, and you're like, oh gosh.
You've only got to be slightly on the wrong angle when you don't see them.
Right. Yeah. Dang, man.
Yeah. So, no.
I like it. I like it.
We're here to dinner time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Like I said, I mean, you guys have done, even Deeks, grabbing the lady that had the dolphin jump on her. I mean, you guys get some really crazy stuff out there. So,
well, we're crazy Kiwis. We're outdoors people. We live on the water. We go in the bush. It's just part of New Zealand life. It's not. The dolphin is obviously purely a one-off.
Yeah, that was a random.
But the rest of what we do, that's just is people out doing what they do. Yeah.
And you guys just go help them out when they get in trouble.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, and all sorts of weathers and bits and pieces, like everybody around the world in these industries do. It's all part and parcel of it. The big thing is, of course, is just keeping yourself safe as a crew and making sure you can do it.
So you've been touching on that quite a bit. So I kind of turn the floor over to you for any advice you would give anybody, words of wisdom you would pass on to, younger guys. And again, you talked a lot about CRM, so I'm on board with you. But if there's anything else you want to pass on to anybody, I'm all ears.
I do go on and on about it because I've seen it work and I've lived it and I've watched other people live it, and I know that it works. If it's conducted properly and everybody buys in, and you leave your ego in your locker, you'll come out of it better. I think the big things for me is the CRM side of things, and maintaining your own high professional standard, so that complacency shouldn't be in there. That it'd be very easy for me just to go to work and go, oh yeah, it's a winch. boom out, but I don't. I do the same thing all the time. I use the same pattern, the same technique. I make sure everything's correct, and I have a high personal standard that I expect anyone that I train to try and come to as well, in the same vein that my instructors in the 80s did to me. That was the bar. You're here, get yourself to here. If you don't get to here, you're ineffective. So maintaining that, having a really good situational awareness of what's going around and looking for change in terms of weather or the task in itself. Another one I did with a helicopter crash. By the end of the day, we'd been there all day. We did a number of hoist, bringing bodies out and bits and pieces. And then right at the end, they went, "Oh, we want you to winch the engine out." And I remember saying to the pilot and medic, "We need to stop and have a think about this, because this is not what we were here to do. We've done what we were here to do." So we went and did it. But it's just that little situation where they go, it's getting late in the day. We're getting a bit tired. It doesn't matter whether the engine comes out today or tomorrow. It's just leave it.
Now we're pieces and parts. And
so we having, and the other one I've heard for years, and I'm a big fan of it as well, is it's not your emergency.
Oh, I love that one. I love it.
Emergency.
Their emergency is not your emergency. Don't make yourself an emergency.
Correct.
Yeah, you're going to help. Remember that.
I've had my own emergencies.
Yeah.
And,
and they're not fun.
They're not fun. But the thing is that it's like somebody in the water is in the water, and you're going to do everything you can to get there. The reason you're going to be able to get there and help them is because you keep yourself controlled and calm and go, "This is what we're going to do. I'm going to put Jason into the water. He's going to do whatever technique, and he's going to grab the guy, and I'm going to hoist him out, and we're back for bare medals." And if you can keep that in your brain, this is my job, and this is what I'm required to do. When it goes wrong, right, now what am I going to do?
Yep.
I have a vivid recollection of a boat sinking as we circled around it. They were sitting on the back. 10 seconds later, I think went bloop. I was like, oh, that wasn't the plan. So their emergency was not mine. I'm still flying around on the helicopter. Around the top.
Totally fine.
Fat, dumb, and happy. Right. Yep. So now what are we going to do? I'm going to send this guy in, and we're going to wet winch these two people out, which is what we did. So I think that's a big one, is to not draw yourself into, oh, they're a status one, or they're in cardiac arrest, we need to get there, and there's defibs and pads and everything.
Whole helicopters flying with medical stuff, and IVs as darts. What are you doing?
It's not our emergency. And these people, as I'm sure, and for you as a rescue swimmer or whatever, they've got an expectation of you, and their expectation of my word is that you're going to turn up as a professional unit and help them. That's their expectation. My expectation is you stay there until we can get there, and then we'll give you whatever help we can. So it's not your emergency.
I really like that.
As a weather, you're flying with MVG and the weather's crap, go home.
Yeah.
Go home.
Yeah. Yep. It's hard for, I know that's hard for people that are listening too, because they're like, really? You're just going to leave me out there? Well, we don't want to. Okay. It's not, we are on standby because we want to come get you. We want to come help you. That's our job. But like, if I can't get to you and now we have an accident, we crash. Now all of a sudden we got 2 accidents that we got to deal with. And that didn't help anybody.
So our guy in my scenario, he got winched out at midday the next day when the weather cleared. Yeah. And he was probably perfectly fine. He was, yeah. Well, not perfectly, but yeah.
Well, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. He lived to tell another day. There's actually a great story with the U.S. Coast Guard out of Humboldt Bay. And, I don't want to go into too many details because I don't want to mess anything up. But the short version is the beacon went off, sailboat in distress. They're stuck outside. They were getting rocked and rolling. They're near the shore. Like, he was complaining that he was getting beat up against the shore and he needed to get off the ship because it was breaking apart. Helicopter goes in, weather's too bad. They make a pass. They can't get down. Pilot says, "Hey, we're going to try it one more time." Sorry, let me rephrase that. The air crew decided, let's try one more time. Again, I don't know the details of all of that. But so they go in to try a lower pass. They still can't do it. They go to try to climb out thinking they're going to go west because they're going to go away from all the mountains. They impact the mountain and kill the whole crew. The next day they go out. The guy that was on the boat that was calling, Mayday is still fat, dumb, and happy. And they pulled him off the next day when the weather was a little bit better. So,
that's a very seasoned pilot that I worked with about 100 years ago. Once he goes, everybody dies in the piss and rain, but they get buried in the sun.
Yeah, true statement. God, that's such a true statement. Very rarely do we get called out when it's clear blue 22. We're getting called out and shit is going sideways.
It's a good one to have in the back of your head when you go flying in shit weather.
Yeah.
You die in the piss and rain, but you'll be buried in the sun.
Yeah.
We need to be here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I actually talked about it with some of the guys up in Ireland as well. They talked about a case where a guy had fallen off a cliff and was obviously deceased. Weather was bad. It was like the guy's already dead. We're not doing anybody any good right now trying to recover a dead body. Let's go back in the morning when the weather's better and go get and retrieve for the family, which I'm all about as well. But
once you're dead, you can't get more dead.
Yeah, exactly. And I want everybody to know, like, we are doing everything we can to come get you. That's what we're training to do.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you have to realize that there are limitations. So anyway, Ernie, this has been amazing. I love talking to you guys down in New Zealand. I can't wait to get down there to hang out with you guys in person. It's going to be awesome.
Oh, you'd love it. You'd absolutely love it.
You might not get me out of there.
I don't know.
With all the pictures that Deke sends me, God, I'm never going to leave.
The gate opens that far to come in, but it goes that far to go out.
Oh, yeah? Don't let it hit you on the way off. Oh, Ernie, I love it. Dude, we will be in touch again. Thank you so much for coming on and just telling these stories, man. This has been amazing. So I appreciate it.
I hope people get something out of it rather than just, it's not a story time. I hope they get something out of it. And doesn't matter what it is, just takes some little nugget and use it later on.
Just a piece. I'm all about it. I love it. Well, thanks again, my friend. I appreciate it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Real ResQ podcast. Please take a minute and, like my daughters like to tell me, like and subscribe. Oh yeah. I'm pulling chocks and taking off. But before I go, if anyone out there has a rescue story that they would be willing to share, I would be humbled and honored to have you as a guest. Or if you have any questions about any of the rescues or anything else that we talk about here on this podcast, send me an email. TheRealResQ@gmail.com. That's TheRealResQ@gmail.com. You can also check us out on our Facebook and Instagram page at The Real ResQ. That's at TheRealResQ. I also want to give a special thank you to all of you staying on the watch today. Always remember that when that SAR alarm goes off, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. Until next time, fly safe and swim hard.